Hey, what is up, everyone? It's the guy here, and welcome to another episode of Themindhere, the bi-weekly podcast where I talk about new knowledge I've learned, projects I'm working on, and current events. Topics may be random, but I hope that with each episode you can come away with a fresh perspective. Welcome to all of you who are here for the first time. If you like my content and want to see more, please consider subscribing. All right, today, this episode is going to be a special episode because we have a guest speaker on. We have here Joy. Welcome, Joy. She is a great friend of mine. And
Hello. Yeah.
yeah, say hi. Well,
Yeah.
do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah. So, hi everyone. My name is Joy. I am a gap year student at the UPenn M&T program, and I am the organizer for HackOR. And throughout this gap year, I've been doing a lot of other projects as well. So, thanks for having me here, Max.
Yeah, no, it's an honor, honestly. What was it? We first met in like middle school, it was like
Yeah.
seventh grade or something. But then we became pretty good friends. We bonded over a web development class in high school. So that was pretty awesome. And I admire you a lot for what you've been able to accomplish during the gap year. So it's pretty impressive there, I'd say.
Yeah, you too. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's get started then. So with the you said you organized a hackathon throughout this break. That's pretty incredible. Do you want to, I guess, explain a little bit what a hackathon is to the people who don't know what it is, or maybe have some misconceptions about it?
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest misconception of a hackathon, without me even starting to explain what a hackathon is that when you hear the word hackathon, you think of it as something that has really high, like very high, barrier to entry. Like, oh, I need to
Stakes.
be a stakes to entry. Yeah, I have to be a hacker, need a program and all that sort of stuff to be able to attend one. But really, the whole purpose of a hackathon is maybe even the opposite of that. I think anyone during a hackathon, anyone with sort of a technical interest can come in and work on a project with either by themselves or with a group of people. And it's a little bit intense in some scenarios because the hackathon itself can be 48 hours, 24 hours, or 32 hours. So very short period of time create a project. But the project creation itself is really fun, and you can just sort of create anything with your team, and also learn stuff through the workshops, and even seek help from mentors. So I think it's just maybe even a short boot camp to learn code and hone in on your skills through project-based learning.
Oh, gotcha. So it's more like, yeah, I think the short boot camp thing was probably a good like analogy for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because when I pictured hackathon, like even before this, I thought of it as like where people that already knew how to code got together and like did something like almost like borderline nefarious or like super complicated. Like oh, we're gonna in like 24 hours you're gonna hack into one of these military satellites for a test. So something like that. That's what I pictured. So yeah, great for clearing this up. I think that like there can be like a misconception behind things. Sometimes
Yeah.
the vocabulary or the words that are used to describe things are sort of like misnomers.
Yeah, like
But
hack, the word. There's not too much
yeah,
cybersecurity involved either. I know there's a different type of hackathon that's like cybersecurity based, but hackathons itself are like projects. And yeah.
yeah, okay, that's good to know though. Yeah. Well, okay. Well, so now we know what a hackathon is. What was like the process of organizing a hackathon yourself? Because like people typically, okay, like people attend hackathons, but like not
Yeah.
many people organize them. So like, how was that? How did you go about doing that?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm organizing a hackathon called HackOR, and it is a little bit different from other hackathon organizers' experience maybe, because instead of not only am I organizing it, but it is a hackathon event that I am starting from scratch. So other hackathons they probably have like templates, but for me, when I'm organizing it, I just started off with an idea like I want to organize a hackathon, And after I assembled a team, we sort of divided the task. Just like any project, even like a hackathon project itself, you have an idea. In this case, the idea is I want to organize a hackathon, and you divide it into small, achievable parts. Like first of all, making a team, and each team would do small parts of the overall event organization itself. Like we have a sponsorship team, and we have an outreach team, and event logistics team, and also teams on even beginner experience. And I think that through any project, even like event organization, if you divide it into small achievable parts, it's really easy to sort of like get through that. But like there is still a lot of uncertainty in organizing an event, a lot of things that we didn't anticipate. So also similar to a hackathon project itself, I guess what I feel like is that organizing a hackathon is kind of like attending a hackathon, but long term, like over the course of a few months. So
Just a
yeah,
bigger hackathon
a
and
bigger
not necessarily
hackathon.
hacking things, right?
Yeah. Hacking the hackathon.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
for sure. When is this hackathon? Can people still join, or would they have to wait for your next session if you're holding a
Yeah.
next one next year?
So depending on when you're watching this, you may still join, because we're actually thinking of closing our registration for round two, which is probably our final round, tomorrow. So hurry up.
Ooh.
Yeah, but I
If you're
think
watching this on the day this comes out, better go sign up for it.
better go sign up now. You can sign up at hackor.org. Yes, and I think
Oh yeah,
yes, but yeah,
it's really awesome.
yeah.
All right. Well, what about, I guess, why did you start this hackathon then? I mean, it's quite a lot of work, so there must have been like some kind of motivation for setting this up, right?
Yeah.
I guess what's different about this compared to another hackathon?
Yeah, for sure. So, why did I organize this hackathon is a really long story. So I won't go into the details of it, but
The
essentially,
general gist of
yeah,
it.
the general gist. Yeah. So essentially, I actually haven't even heard of a hackathon like until my gap year started. During my gap year, I was like, wow, I need to work on some technical projects, some things to keep busy. Since it's COVID, can't really travel or do
Uh-huh.
other things. And then I discovered hackathons,
Yeah.
which are like sort of like events that can help me both socialize and hone in my skills and meet new people. And I was like, whoa, this is like awesome. And while I was attending these hackathons, I'm talking to my friends, for example, Max and other people that I know. And everyone I talk to, they're usually like, what is a hackathon? And I found out that not a lot of people, not as many people as I like to know about hackathons. So I started HackOR as sort of like an event to bring hackathon events to more students. And I think when I'm making this event too, I also try to, whether it is through our website or when I'm talking to people about it, just to emphasize how beginner friendly it is. Like, you don't have to have
Oh
hackathon
yeah.
experience before this. Anyone can attend, and you can just attend also for like the workshops too. And yeah, I mean, my main motivation is to just get people into this community, because it's really a wholesome community. And even when I'm organizing hackathon, a lot of other organizers help me a lot. Like I would ping them, like people I don't even know. I'll be like, "Hey, I'm organizing a hackathon, but I'm new to this. So what things do you recommend I do?" And they would just be so helpful. And I think that's what's great about this community. And I think people should know more about this. Yeah,
That's quite noble. Yeah, I again, like before this, I mean, I sort of knew what a hackathon was. There were some friends that, like, some of my friends did hackathons, or like they attended hackathons, but like again, it was, they already had coding experience, so going in, it was like it seemed like just something that like people who knew how to code went in and did some like intense project on. But it's
yeah,
really nice to hear it's a beginner friendly, and also like your efforts to reach out to people and try to get people into the community. I think that's something that maybe other hackathons don't focus enough on, like reaching people that are outside of the coding community. Because it's probably quite easy to be like, hey, all you people who have done stuff, here's something like on Stack Exchange or whatever, wherever
Yeah.
like a lot of like this like experienced programmers go on. It's like, hey, there's a hackathon. They'll be like, oh, cool. But like to people who don't know what a hackathon is or even know how to code, it's really nice to be able to like reach out and be like, hey, here's like an onboarding way to get into this community.
Yeah.
So that's pretty valuable, I would
Yeah,
say.
and I think at Max, I really like when you said, you sort of knew what it is, but knowing is different from actually doing it. And I don't know, I like that
For sure.
philosophy a lot. But yeah, yeah,
For sure.
yeah,
Yeah. And I guess just the like coding itself is something that some people have a misconception about
yeah,
sometimes, right?
100%.
Uh, and if someone were to say like, okay, so I want to get started with coding, what language would you suggest them to start with? What did you start with?
Yeah, so I started with Python in sixth grade, and I dropped it like a hot potato. And then I picked it back up, and I was all right. I need to do this. But and then web development, so I knew a little bit JavaScript. So for me, it's sort of like anything and nothing. And I think everyone's first language is also sort of like that. It's both like luck, what you had, what resources you had, whether it's classes you take or books you read, and what projects you want to work on. And first languages, I think if you sort of just ask anyone or Google what's a good first language, the first language that would pop up is Python. That would make sense because it's a pretty versatile language and beginner friendly. But I would say that anything you want to learn or sort of fits for you, you should make that your first language because your first language should be a medium of introducing you to coding and not a barrier like something that you're coding but you're not really having too much fun with. If you're not having too much fun with that language, you should switch languages. For me, I dropped Python in sixth grade because at the time I was really interested in making something that's visually appealing, and Python's turtle
Hmm.
program just
Yeah.
wasn't that. But later on when I picked back on it, I was like, this is actually really cool. But it just really depends on the circumstance and who you are. And it's less about which language you learn and more about, when you're learning a language, if you think it's not really for you, instead of extrapolating it to coding is not for you, you should just switch that language or try something out. Yeah. I don't know. That's would be my advice.
Yeah, that's a good point you make. That yeah, because when you start off, I guess you could either start off with so what happened with me was I wanted to start learning to code because I got into a concept called blockchain, and there was this like the how you there's this programming language on the Ethereum network. Right now, this sounds all like gibberish, but like so I wanted to do something on this network, and because the language that was used on this network is similar to JavaScript from what I've seen, I started with JavaScript because of that, because I wanted to like get onto that, but they recommended like you definitely should have like prior coding experience before going into something like experimental like that, right?
Mhm.
So for me, I had a somewhat of a direction, or like I knew what I sort of wanted to do, and then so I chose JavaScript as a start. And for me, like JavaScript, it was, I guess, I learned pretty. I thought it was a pretty good language to start off with, but there were some things about it that might not be too beginner friendly. Uh, I mean, it depends on where you learn it to from, right? Because there's a lot of like free online stuff that which is really incredible. If you go online and search up on YouTube or Google like tutorials on any language, you'll find a whole lot of content on it, and even like Code Academy or for something, right? There you can do some practices on there. You don't even need to download any kind of software on Code Academy. You can just go on and like start typing stuff in the browser, and you can learn from it, which is really awesome. I think that's probably like one of the best tools to get started with, because it's really easy to get started with. You just make like an account on there, and it's like a normal web application. You just go on there and like type some stuff. You don't need to get the text editors or any advanced like IDEs for you to like purposefully type out and do stuff with the language. So Code Academy was a great tool for me, I thought. But just in general, like even if you don't know what language to start off with, I would say that like just like searching up any language and just starting off with it, as long as it's like popular enough that you'll have a lot of support with it. I'd recommend a popular language, but any language would probably do well, because I've noticed when I've like started learning other languages that the concepts of coding, some concepts of coding, carry out like throughout all the languages. It's just that like there's different syntax, or different languages approach things differently. But just whatever you start off with, it can be you can switch, and you'll be able to learn much faster if you've already had prior experience in some language, I think.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. And that's also why it doesn't really matter what the language it is. Oh, it matters a little bit because some languages are harder to learn as a beginner, because either
Mm-hmm.
because of documentation or because of, for example, lower level languages versus higher level languages. But even then, the language, how abstract the language is doesn't quite affect, like, even learning lower level languages, they can actually help you maybe long term by understanding, when you get to something that's more higher level, you can understand why it works. And yeah, it really just
Yeah.
depends on the person. Kind of a cop out answer, but I think that's something that's important for everyone to know. But yeah.
No, yeah, of course. It really depends on who's learning it too. Because yeah, it might be easy for someone else to like learn like a higher level language, but it might be better for someone else to understand the lower level concepts of like, oh yeah, it has to store things in memory, blah blah blah, stuff like that, and like understanding from the bottom up. That might be something. It really depends, I think, on the person, but it's something important too, to realize that like coding isn't this like magic thing where you put words into something and like the computer magically does stuff. It's a tool that like tells the computer like different instructions, right? And it's something that I feel like people, if you understand that like, okay, coding is just getting a computer to do things I tell it to do, then you can sort of like take a like a higher level look at it. And like once you get into it, I feel like you'll also start understanding like the like how programmers think a little bit, because you can once you get into it, you can start seeing things like, okay, you want to make things reusable, you want to do things that you can create things that you can come back to later and reuse, rather than like coding a whole new thing every time you do it, right? So concepts like that, um, and like understanding like
Boilerplates.
data
Yeah.
structures,
Yeah.
yeah, stuff like that, like understanding how to manipulate information, store information, for example. That's pretty abstract stuff. If you want to actually implement it, it depends on the language, and there's like a whole bunch of different things, but like just broad level stuff like that, I think is also pretty interesting.
Yeah, essentially just get into it. Doesn't matter how you get into it, but once you get into it, everything will, make a lot more sense. But you just have to dip your feet in the water. Don't don't, stress about all the other stuff. Everyone
Hmm.
has a different experience. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and another thing, I guess, it might be some advice, because I know there's online courses that are free, and there's also ones that are paid. And
Uh,
some people might take the mentality of like, free, everything must be free, and do things that are only free. No, I fall prey to that. I like doing things free, but there is a
mhm.
caveat I found to that, where sometimes, like especially with more reputable online courses like Udemy, for example, there's a reason why they are paid courses. That paywall sort of gets the people that like actually do buy the course really want to learn the course, right? And the course, if there's like good reviews and a whole bunch of reviews, then it's going to be a good course. And like some of the courses that I taken on Udemy, I did buy a few courses and go through them. I found that like good courses that you come across, they don't just teach you like, okay, do this, then do this, then do this. They teach you a
Why?
lot of like, yeah, why, broader concepts, like the JavaScript course I took, like, why do you do this in JavaScript, like how does JavaScript do things like behind the scenes. And they give you practices to do, so rather than like just, okay, type this out, looks cool, they'll like purposely leave errors in there, so then they'll be like, oh, this error happened, why did this happen? And it's like
Yeah.
a learning experience, and then they have these exercises you can do, and then there's their version of it you can like check with, but as long as you like get the right results, it like teaches you like there's different ways to approach things. So I just think that like starting off, you might want to start with free stuff, just to see if like it's something for you, to get into, if there's languages for you, etc., stuff like that. But as you progress, sometimes the paid courses, I think they're well worth their money, because what the whole thing about like courses and classes is that they shorten the learning curve. They flatten the learning curve, shorten the time it takes to learn, if they're taught well. Because instead of like trial and error and looking through the documentation of a language, they'll like teach you how it works, and then you'll be able to like very quickly get onto it. So that's something to take into mind, I feel like, with learning a new language.
Yeah, and sort of building onto that, that is, if you really sort of scale the meaning of what a paid course is, and if you really think about it, college is sort of also a long, costly paid course, paid
Yeah,
courses,
it's a mega course.
mega course. And in a way, I think paid courses are good because it also is a way to motivate yourself. Like, I paid for this. If I don't complete this course, I'm losing money. But at least for me, when I find myself chugging through something hard, I'm just like, all right,
Mhm.
if this is something that's paid, I'll be much more motivated to finish it.
Yeah,
But
it's a real thing.
yeah, yeah, I think it depends on the class though itself. At least for me, some things I think are might be even better if you learn on your own, versus a class. I don't know, like exploratory, versus something else might be easier if you actually learn it with a group. And actually, I think I read an article somewhere that's talking about different types of learning. Like learning by yourself is sort of like exploring, sort of sandbox, like trying things out, learning through doing, and learning through a course is more like learning through someone giving the knowledge to you. At least in my experience, because when I learned by myself, I usually would either read the documentation, try some projects on my own, and I think the general rule of thumb, at least what I read, is that usually for easier things or things that you are more familiar with, is better that you learn more about it on your own. And then with things that are more abstract, and you don't really know too much about, I think it's better to learn it with a class. At least that's my take.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
No, I totally agree with that. And I think that at some point, you might start off with not knowing too much about it. And then you might say, like, okay, a course might be better, or like watching someone else do it, something like that. A structured learning might be better to get yourself onboarded. But once you like get familiar with a language and stuff, or like any skill, for example,
Yeah. Or
it
even
might be
if it's,
better than to
yeah.
yeah, it might be better to then jump to a project and say like, okay, I'm going to apply this. Because it's one thing to like go through classes and be like, okay, this is how you do things, but it's another thing to go do projects on your own and then like realize some mistakes and stuff.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think
One thing I think,
definitely like switching back and forth.
if you already know a programming language, you shouldn't pay money. At least that's my take. Okay, if you already know a language, you shouldn't pay money for
Yeah.
to learn another language, because languages translate to each other very well. Like if you know, for example, Rust, and you want to learn Go, you should probably not pay for a Go class. Just like read the documentation. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it's one thing though. I mean, okay, so this semester I was taking a Java class, right?
yeah.
And then so I started this project during the summer. It was like coding a Minecraft plugin,
Hmm.
and it uses Java, right? But before that, I knew about what like JavaScript. Which is different from Java, first of all. So those of you who don't uh, know about coding languages, yeah, those are different languages. But so JavaScript, it's loosely typed compared to Java, right? So and with Java, like a whole bunch of things are all like classes. So it's just basically like different structures of like information. But the thing is, you might laugh at this, but like when I was looking at like comparisons between like different strings, for example,
Mhm.
in JavaScript, all you do is like the equality operator, right? Equal, equal, equal. But with Java, you can't do that because it's not like a primitive. So then
Yeah.
every time I kept using like the equality operator, I was like, why is it not equal? But then and then I discovered, whoa, there's like
Yeah.
the equals method, but I didn't realize like what it meant. And then through the course, I realized like, oh yeah, a lot of this is like class based. So like everything that's not a primitive
Yeah.
has like a class. And I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense. So some things like you might be experimenting with it, and I guess it's good to learn some of those mistakes. It might be frustrating at sometimes, but you with a structured course, you can sort of avoid that sometimes, but also, I mean, once you've made the mistake too, you sort of appreciate the effectiveness of the course, right? Because
Yeah, that's for sure.
yeah, especially with a good professor,
Mhm.
just I was able to like really appreciate how like he taught the different how like things go together, how inheritances work, stuff like that. That's a very invaluable experience, I feel. But we also you mentioned that you are taking a gap year. So how was your gap year experience? Would you not expect? Would you recommend some like people do it, or like certain people it might be beneficial to do it? What was your experience, and what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so my gap year is definitely special. After quarantine, it would not apply to people a lot. Usually, when people take gap year, they travel, volunteer, work on, work at a company, but in person, my gap year experience, the bulk of it is hackathons, which is why, I'm talking about hackathons now, and
Yeah, yeah.
a lot of learning. But I think for recommending gap years to people, I've personally heard this advice from people too when I'm deciding whether I should be taking a gap year. And the advice is that whether you want to take a gap year or not, it should not depend on circumstances. Like even the pandemic should not, maybe decide whether you take a gap year or not. What really should drive you to make that decision is what are you going to be doing with your time during your gap year? And I think when people when people are thinking of taking gap year, they should sort of like think ahead, loosely. What are the things they want to do and how they can benefit from a gap year? For example, for me, gap year is the time for me to build more skills and reflect and become more experienced in terms of like projects and work experience and that sort of things, and also learn about what I want to do. But for other people who maybe already have those experiences or know exactly what they want to do, I would not necessarily recommend taking a gap year because that would just be sort of wasting your time. And yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty good advice, I think. And even here's the thing though, like even with the, I guess it's sort of a norm to just like the traditional path of education is you go through high school and then you go to college, get a 4-year degree, possibly a master's, then go off, that's the traditional route. So just 4-year college or something. But I think there's a movement, and I think it's a good thing to start like questioning a bit about like what education route do you want to take, because not everyone, like people are not the same, like you are not the same as like the person next to you to like the person across, like, halfway across the world, right? So to prescribe people the same education route, I don't feel like that's effective. So for some people it might, like even like depending on what you want to do, you might it might be make more sense for you to go to trade school rather than college, or it might make more sense to do 2-year degree, or do like some other program, maybe a gap year, or it might take you like 5 years to graduate doing something else that gives you more work experience, for example, right? Um, that is something that I feel like more people should, it should be taught more, or like just more people should get exposed to like the idea that education isn't just something like the pipe, like shove you through a pipeline and go like, you are now a fully functional worker. No, 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 no. That's not how it works. Uh, it's very like tailored to you, and it's more that like what will add more value to your career and to your life, right? So like for you, it made sense to do a gap year, but like for me or something,
It might not.
someone,
Yeah, yeah,
someone, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it doesn't make sense. But I opted to go with a co-op, and people who aren't familiar with that is it's sort of like an extended internship. There's different sessions of a co-op. You typically have either 3 or 5 sessions, at least at Purdue, and what they are, each session is sort of like either a semester, so a fall semester or a spring semester, or the summer, and you get like 5 sessions with the same employers. Then you can keep coming back and like working on keep working on projects, and the longer you stay, there's sort of like a economies of scale per se. Like if you work at an internship, you only get like this limited amount of time before like you cut ties sort of with the company. Whereas a co-op, you get more time and experience with the company, so like you become a more valuable member of the company, for example. But like, of course, with like 5 sessions or even 3 sessions, it might take you longer to graduate. And to some people, that just the thought of like, ooh, 5 years or like not 4 years to graduate, that's like it's pretty wild. But it's like education shouldn't be time based, I don't think, because like even with, if you think about it, even with like grade school and stuff, some people learn faster than others, right? But to expect people to within like the same amount of time learn, like, okay, you go through grade school, it's a set amount of time, but each person comes out with like different like amount of like uh, different amount of like learning from that, I feel like is sort of backwards. Like the time should be sort of like dependent on how much time it takes for you to like learn a certain thing, right? So some people, maybe it takes like I don't know, like 13 or 14 years to go through from like K through 12 or something, the traditional grades K through 12. But just like rethinking the idea of like this set like time schedule of like someone taking like going through these grades sequentially and then going through something else. I feel like people need to be individualized more, instead of like thinking as like a commodity just shoved through an education pipeline to get a good workforce.
Yeah, for
So that's
sure.
something, yeah, something to think about, uh, if
Yeah.
wherever in your education career, I think.
Yeah, I think as you grow older, you should have more, you should put more thought into, what really you want to do. And I don't know if the current education system emphasizes that much. I mean, we're improving compared to, like 10 years ago. But yeah, I
uh,
think, okay, a little bit. I think COVID also helped
a little
drive
bit,
the fact that, different forms of educations are all
definitely.
valid. And yeah, I
Yeah.
just think it's very important for anyone to consider where you are in the system right now and where you sort of want to go. And
And even just the idea that like education is something you do at the beginning, and once you start working, like going back to school, that's like a child's play thing. No, no, no. Like education is something you can like add on to your like
yeah,
to your career,
the
right?
the
Because
most
especially,
yeah. Sorry,
go
continue.
ahead.
Yeah, no, no. I was about to.
Oh, my bad.
No, I feel I agree with that so much. It's just like even after you graduate, people think, oh, I graduate, I'm not gonna have to learn anymore. That's totally untrue. You
No,
have to
yeah.
keep learning. You have to keep,
Education is, yeah,
yeah,
lifelong.
bruh.
Exactly.
Yes.
uh and like especially in the modern day, when there's like innovation happening left and right, and like everything is changing so rapidly, technology is evolving so fast, and like different social phenomena are happening all at once and converging, for example. uh it's important to like periodically come back and like re-educate yourself in some things, I feel like, because like you might know how to operate like a CNC or something, but if you go on for 10 more years, you might not be needed anymore. You might need a new skill set, or even just like adding on to your skill set, becoming like a more valuable, like learning different machines that are out there. Like, oh, it's a 3D printer. How do you like work with that compared to a CNC, and like know the ins and outs if you're like a technician, for example. Adding on to your education shouldn't be something that's like additional school shouldn't be seen as like, ooh, you didn't like learn everything you needed during your normal school years. Like, of course you didn't. You didn't expect like all this like technological innovation to like happen within the 10 years, right?
Hmm.
So, like continuing education, like not necessarily going back to college per se. Like you could probably do like any sort of like type of education almost, whether it be like a different course program, a boot camp, or like going back to college, whatever it may be. But like just continuing that education is something that is pretty important, especially with the modern workforce.
Yep.
All right. Oh yeah, and one thing you mentioned how when you were creating the like the hackathon, right? You had a whole bunch of help with it, and this is sort of like tangentially related, but you're also probably familiar with like the open source culture of coding community, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about like your thoughts on this open source culture and how this different, like maybe first off, like what is open source, and then like how is this different, and like what do you feel about it?
Yeah.
You probably have more experience than
So,
I do.
well, I don't know. Everyone has a different experience with open source. When you're saying, okay, when you first asked, like, do you want to talk a little bit about how you feel of open source? I'm like, what else would I say other than it's awesome? And it just, I think it's like a community. You know, before coding is like, especially, I think it's more applicable in the workforce, but like when you're in work. But before, companies would, code, and their code would stay within, their company. But with open source, essentially, it's uniting the mental power and knowledge of all of the people interested in tech to give anyone, not just the big companies, the ability to contribute to the industry as a whole. And I find that really powerful, sort of like similar to crowdsourcing. And I don't know, it's really cool, and anyone can get involved. That's sort of my take. I don't know what other opinions I would have other than it's
Hmm.
good. I'm still learning about the community itself, myself. But I think that anyone who's interested in tech should definitely check out what open source is. Yeah. By the way, not sure if my description is 100% correct, but that's sort of like my take of what the community is. You can probably find out what it is by Googling, what is open source. And there'll be people that have like, tens, and many years of experience in the community who could probably answer that better than me. And I think that's also the beauty of the community because there's a lot of people involved.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, it's a lot of it. I feel like is about community. Like I don't have that much experience, and one of like the reasons why I sort of asked it was because I'm very interested in the open source nature of some projects, and
Yeah. Which
like how
projects?
programmers like collaborate together. A good chunk of the blockchain projects that I spoke of, so just like another like experimental like projects, a good chunk of those are open source, which means like you can see the source code, you can see what's like written there rather than just like the obfuscated binary files that you like you click on to run your program or something,
Yeah. You
right?
can also,
So like
yeah. Sorry.
yeah, so
Yeah.
stuff like that, it's pretty interesting. It got me interested in like the community aspect of it. Just it really pops out, and it's wholesome.
Well, yeah. Yeah. That's the word I would use too.
Yeah, it's a rare word to use on the internet today, but
Oh. Oh. Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, I think this was a really good episode. I learned quite a bit about this,
Hmm.
about like just coding itself and your different experiences. So I really appreciated you for coming onto my episode today. Thank you so much, Joy.
Yeah. No problem. No problem. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
where would you like people to follow you if you want to be followed by people, the few people that watch this or listen to these episodes?
Yeah, so I actually don't have that many public accounts, but you can follow the HackOR Hackathon. We're probably going to go annual, not sure, at the HackOR. Same with Facebook, same link. Um, and then I guess if you're curious, I also draw. You can follow my art account. Max can probably put all
She's
of
really
this.
good.
Yeah, yeah. Thank
Oh yeah,
you.
I'll put them in the description
Yeah.
for you guys to link to. So yeah, take a look, check her out. I appreciate everyone for listening, and of course, thank you so much, Joy, for coming to this episode. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section below. Stay tuned. I'm hoping to get more guests like Joy on here, but it was a pleasure. Joy, thank you so much for coming, and take care, everyone.
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Adios.
See you, everyone.